It was supposed to be just another evening in NYC until one unexpected moment rewrote her life forever. The city never sleeps. But that night, the streets of New York were drenched in a quiet tension, as if the skyline itself was holding its breath. Rain-slicked streets reflected the neon glow of billboards, and the hum of distant traffic sounded like a heart-beaten, anxious, relentless pulse. At the center of it all was Emma Hayes, a young woman of 28, who had always felt like life was moving around her while she stood frozen, unable to catch up. Her auburn hair clung to her face, plastered by the rain, her worn leather jacket soaked through, and her hands trembled as she clutched the crumpled envelope in her pocket. Tonight, everything would change, whether she was ready or not. Before we dive deeper, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the power of a single moment to change lives, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel because this story will remind you just how fragile and precious life can be. Emma had come to New York with dreams larger than her small hometown in Ohio could contain. She had imagined the city as a place where ambition collided with possibility, where every street corner held a story waiting to unfold, but reality had been harsher than she anticipated. After years of working multiple jobs, facing countless rejections, and watching friends settle into predictable lives, she felt invisible like a ghost drifting through the chaos of the city. She had a small apartment in Brooklyn, where the peeling paint and leaky faucet reminded her daily of her failures, and a part-time job at a crowded diner that barely covered rent. Yet she had hope, a fragile, stubborn ember she refused to let die. That night, Emma's hope felt like it was on the verge of extinguishing. She had just left a meeting that shattered her optimism entirely. A major publishing company had promised her a shot at getting her first manuscript noticed, only to dismiss it with a cold, perfunctory rejection. Walking through the rain, the city's lights blurred into streaks, echoing the blur of disappointment and self-doubt clouding her mind. She felt a familiar hollow in her chest feeling of being small, unseen, and utterly unimportant. And then, as she crossed the narrow bridge connecting Manhattan to Brooklyn, something shifted. A sudden scream pierced the night, sharp and raw, slicing through the rhythm of rain and traffic. Emma froze, instinct overriding fear. Down an alleyway, dimly lit and slick with water, she saw a man crouched over another, his movements desperate and frenzied. The scene was chaotic shouts, scuffling, and a sense of danger so immediate that her heart threatened to burst from her chest. Instinctively, Emma ran toward them, her hands shaking, her mind screaming at her to stay back. But she couldn't. She couldn't turn away, not tonight. Not when someone needed help. As she got closer, she realized it wasn't a mugging or a random act of violence. It was something far more devastating. The man on the ground was unconscious, a deep cut bleeding across his temple, and the other, a young stranger with fear in his eyes, seemed paralyzed, unsure how to help. Emma knelt beside the injured man, pressing her hand over the wound, her voice trembling as she whispered urgent commands. She guided the stranger to call for an ambulance, to stay calm, and to stay by his side. In those frantic, adrenaline-fueled moments, Emma felt alive in a way she hadn't in years. The ambulance arrived, lights flashing, sirens screaming through the night, and Emma watched as the paramedics took over. The stranger, a boy barely older than 20, turned to her, gratitude and relief mingling in his wide eyes. No words were spoken at first, only the sound of rain pattering on the asphalt, the city returning to its indifferent hum. But in that silence, Emma felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: purpose. She had made a difference tonight. She had saved someone. Walking back into the rain, the memory of that night replayed endlessly in her mind. She didn't know the boy's name, nor would she see him again, but his look of raw, unfiltered gratitude stayed with her. It made her question everything she had believed about herself. For years, Emma had felt invisible, powerless, trapped by circumstance. But tonight proved otherwise. The world, in its indifferent chaos, had offered her a moment of clarity. She mattered. The days that followed were a blur of reflection. Emma began to see the city differently, not as a place that crushed dreams, but as a living, breathing entity capable of beauty, danger, and wonder, all at once. She started volunteering at a local community center, helping kids who felt as lost and unseen as she once had. She wrote tirelessly, her manuscript now infused with the raw honesty of someone who had stared life in the eye and refused to back down. Every page, every word, carried the weight of her fear, her failures, and the night she discovered her own courage. Emma's story didn't change overnight. Life in New York remained chaotic, unforgiving, and unpredictable. There were days when the rain blurred her vision and nights when rejection letters arrived in her mailbox like unwelcome reminders of reality. But the memory of that night, the night that should have been just another ordinary evening, kept her moving forward. It reminded her that even in the darkest alleyways, even when the world seems indifferent, a single act of courage can create ripples that transform lives. Months later, a letter arrived. It wasn't from the publishing company that had rejected her, nor was it from anyone she knew. It was from the boy she had helped on the bridge that night. His words were simple, raw, and heartfelt. He had been on the verge of losing everything, a young man adrift in a city too large to notice him, and Emma's intervention had changed the course of his life. He spoke of hope renewed, of choices reconsidered, and of the way a stranger's courage had reminded him of the humanity still left in the world. Emma held the letter to her chest, tears streaming down her face, realizing that the impact of a single night could extend far beyond what she could ever imagine. And then, almost as if the universe had been waiting for her readiness, opportunities began to open. Her writing caught the eye of an independent publisher, someone who saw the depth in her words, the honesty in her struggle. Her manuscript was finally accepted, and her first book, titled Reflections in the Rain, was published to acclaim. Readers wrote to her, sharing their own stories of despair, of nights that seemed hopeless, and of how her words had reminded them to keep moving forward. Every message was a testament to resilience, courage, and the transformative power of one small act. Through it all, Emma remained the same person who had wandered the rain-soaked streets of New York, trembling and uncertain. But she was no longer invisible. She had discovered that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, nudging us toward action when fear threatens to paralyze us. That night, the city hadn't just tested her, it had revealed her. It had shown her that the human heart, when pushed to its limits, has an extraordinary capacity to rise, to heal, and to inspire. If this story has touched your heart, if it reminded you that even the smallest acts of kindness can change lives, please engage with this video. Like, share, and subscribe to support stories that celebrate hope and the extraordinary potential in every human heart. And if this story resonated with you, leave a comment sharing the moment that changed your life. You never know who might read it, and find the courage to keep going. Emma's journey didn't end with one night. The city remained vast and unpredictable, just as it had always been, but she had found her place within it. She walked the streets with her head held a little higher, her steps a little surer, knowing that while life could break you down, it could also lift you in ways you never expected. That night in New York didn't just change her life, it became the cornerstone of everything she would become. Courage, empathy, and love had intersected on a rain-soaked bridge, proving that even in a city of millions, a single act could shine brighter than the brightest neon lights. And sometimes, all it takes is one night to change everything.